How are we going to view our child in their strengths, in the places that they might be struggling a little bit, and meet them where they're at with an education that is going to benefit them for the rest of their lives?
You're listening to the Connected Parenting Minute with Will and CarrieAnn Standfest. This podcast is a conversation about parenting using connection first, trauma-informed principles. Because when you lead with connection, everyone feels seen, which is the foundation to a more peaceful home. This podcast reminds you that you don't have to be a perfect parent, but we can all get a little better, one connected parenting minute at a time.
Hello, and welcome back to the Connected Parenting Minute. My name is Will Standfest, and I'm so glad you've chosen to join us today for the podcast. With me is the lovely CarrieAnn Standfest.
Hey, everybody. We're so excited to be sharing with you.
Today is a special episode of the Connected Parenting Minute.
It is a special episode because we are recording this specifically for our attendees at the CAFO conference.
That's right. We were at the CAFO conference last weekend where we got to speak, and we led a breakout workshop on educational options for our children.
This is where we covered a lot of the different options that we have and the pros and cons of each of those options,
including public school, private school, homeschool. What are the pros and cons of that for any of our kids, but especially for adoption and foster care, because that's the heart of the CAFO conference.
Absolutely. And for those that don't know, it's Christian Alliance for Orphans. So it is a conference that happens every year. And I think there was over 50 countries represented.
Yeah, 50 countries. And they said 2,200, 2,300 attendees.
It was a really busy several days. And we had a lot of fun.
Oh, it was so lovely. It was really great to see a lot of our friends there and to reconnect with other people that are working in a similar space, teaching about parenting and trauma and all these other things that are really, really meaningful.
Absolutely. One of the other things we talked about was special education, IEPs, 504s, just kind of dissecting that a little bit. But we promised our attendees that we were going to do a special episode just for them, talking about this idea of how do we choose what kind of education we want to provide for our children.
Right, because there are a lot of options out there. And our workshop really unpacked all those different options and kind of weighed a lot of the pros and cons. And so at the end of that, you still are sitting here with three major options and some minor options underneath it of, do I homeschool? Do I public school? Do I private school? And here's all the pros and cons, but how do I choose?
Exactly. And I wish we could have taken the time to actually sit and unpack that there, but we only had an hour. And that's kind of a short period of time to go over all these things and then actually get a chance to answer questions.
Yeah, it was, we probably could have cut it a little bit shorter to give more time for questions, but it was a really good workshop. I enjoyed the interactions we had. Some people had some really good suggestions of things we can make sure to include the next time we present on this. And to be honest, we could have spent an hour just on 504s and IEPs and not had enough time. So being able to kind of pack those two halves into a 60-minute session was a lot of content, but it was fun.
It was so much fun. And I really enjoyed being able to present and be able to interact with our attendees. I was so blessed by it.
It was really good. So without further ado, baby, we've got to ask ourselves 3 questions when we're trying to choose a schooling option for our child. What's the first question to ask ourselves?
So our first question is, who am I?
Who am I? Okay. Say more about that.
All right. So when we're talking about the education that we want to provide for our children, we really do have to go back and ask ourselves, what is my story? What are my expectations? How am I looking at this piece of education, this piece of my child's life? And what am I bringing into the picture?
Oh, interesting. Because our educational history really informs, what we see as normal. Because as we said in the workshop, I grew up going to private schools and you grew up going to homeschools. And so when you become an adult, your educational experience as a child sets what you think of as normal.
Yeah. And it was an interesting exercise because we had everyone kind of raise their hand and what their background was primarily. Now, we do have a lot of people that have a huge array of experiences growing up. But like you said, when you're taking into consideration what you would expect for your child's education, a lot of times it's going to come from what you experienced, either negative or positive.
Yeah, because I think you gave the best example of you grew up homeschooling, and what did you tell yourself?
I was never going to homeschool my kids. Not because I didn't love it, because I really did, but there was certain things that stuck out to me that was like, I want to have my child experience something different. Specifically, I really liked dances and never got to go to them. So
I'm going to tell you didn't miss much, but
I didn't know.
But you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
And so that's I think that's a really important point to not really miss, is the way we grew up really sets what we think of as normal.
Mm-hmm.
And having grown up in private faith-based schools, to me, that was the normal thing you did.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a person of faith, you send your children to private faith-based schools. And then I became an adult and I saw the price tag attached to that. And I said, oh,
maybe that might not work for us.
I don't know that that's realistic for us.
And that's fair because, we ended up choosing to have a whole lot of children. And in that aspect, it would not have ever been really affordable for us, or we would have lived in like a shack and walked
in a
everywhere.
van down by the river eating government cheese specifically.
Oh my gosh. All right. The other aspect of I want to take with this question of who am I really comes down to another piece of this, because if we're talking private, or if we're talking specifically public school, but we have a complicated history with public school, taking into consideration how we're going to interact in those situations, can we be a positive, supportive parent in that instance, or is that going to bring up stuff for us?
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
If we're going to homeschool, there is a whole other level of asking a question, who am I? Am I going to be flexible? Am I going to be patient when I need to be? A lot of people tell me, oh, I can never homeschool. But really what I think they're saying is that there are so many pieces of that I don't want to undertake that I don't think that I could ever do that. Now, I will tell you as a homeschool parent, it really comes down to taking bits by bits. But I know that deep down, I have that consistent presence in my child's life, and I want to be present in that. And while there are other things I could spend my time on, I recognize the value of that. And we have that option.
Yeah. Well, and to be specific, who are you? You're somebody that finds a lot of value in that.
Right.
Right. And there are some families where they may find a lot of value in having both parents work. Like that might be something that is deeply important to them, to show kids that, both their parents can work and they can have a successful family. Because we are by no means saying that if you don't homeschool your kids, you're doing it's wrong or something like that.
No,
it's just,
absolutely.
your family just looks different. And that's okay. Going back to what you used to, you kind of normalize being able to acknowledge that you normalized how you grew up, and that there are different ways to do schooling that can be good or even better for your family, I think is a really important piece to consider.
Right. And it's just asking yourself, how am I going to interact with these different scenarios? Because if you go, well, we want to send our child to private school and we're going to spend all this money on it, but I know personally that's going to be really hard for me because I'm thinking about all the other things I could be spending money on, my hard-earned money on, then, it might not put you in the best place to have the most positive mindset about that.
Right. There might be some resentment that builds up there.
Exactly. That was the word I was looking for.
All right. Well, that's interesting.
We are on the road again. We're teaching at 2 conferences this fall, CAFO 2025 and the Replanted Conference. If you live in the Houston area, check us out at CAFO Summit, October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Go to CAFO2025.org for more details. That's CAFO2025.org. Or if you live in the Chicago area, come see us at the Replanted Conference, October 23rd, 24th, and 25th. Go to replantedconference.org for more details. That's replantedconference.org. And if you want us to speak at your next event, reach out to us. Use info@connectedparentingminute.com and we would love to work with you.
And now back to the show. So what would be the second question I ask? After I ask myself, who am I? Now what do I need to ask myself?
Now we're going to ask ourselves, who is my child?
Who is my child? Okay.
All right. And this comes down to the fact that every one of our children are different.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amen.
Right. And we have 8 of them. So we do know a little bit about this. But our children have different personalities, they have different experiences, they have different backgrounds. So when we're talking in the context of foster and adoption, I mean, that brings a whole nother level to this question because we have to take in consideration what their history is. We have to take into consideration how that history is playing out in their current life. And we have to take into consideration, especially if we're talking about foster care, and if you have kiddos in foster care and you have the option to homeschool, which can be done, or, there's just a lot of things to be thinking about when we're talking about our kids and their education.
Because foster care, the goal of foster care is reunification.
Mm-hmm.
And if this child is going to be reunifying once the parents have kind of completed their plan, having them gone through homeschool for a period of time and then going back to their kind of family of origin, is that going to be the best situation for that kiddo?
Right.
And I think quite genuinely, that answer could be yes or it could be no.
Exactly. But when we're asking ourselves who our child is, we're also asking how they learn.
Yeah.
Because with different education options, there are different flexibilities in certain things, but some children might need more one-on-one attention for certain subjects, and so if you're going to be like, well, we have to public school, but then take into consideration, well, if they need more time and attention with this, maybe we end up with tutors. Maybe we do this. Maybe we spend more time on math after school together. But we have to ask ourselves who our children are and what is the best way that they learn, because every kid learns different too.
Yeah, they do. Let me tell you, it's a little crazy to think how differently each of our children learn, just in the sense of math, right? Which is a subject that some people hate and some people love.
Mm-hmm.
But we've found a homeschooling math approach that has a lot of manipulatives, a lot of hands-on, like little blocks. So you can see ones and tens and fives and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And for some of our kids, that's been fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And for some of our other kids, they're like, oh my gosh, will this dummy stop telling me to pull out the blocks?
Right.
So it's just a very real acknowledgement that each of our kids needs different things. And if we're talking about special education,
mm-hmm.
I think that's a big piece too, because we have kiddos that have IEPs. We've had several kiddos over the years that have had IEPs. And some of those kiddos would not have been best served being homeschooled at certain points in their lives.
Right.
There are times where they just need a very high level of one-on-one support. And when you are homeschooling several kiddos
children
at home, you might not be able to give that high level of support that your child needs. And so an acknowledgement that in that situation, maybe the public school is the best situation for my child at this time, and being okay with that.
Right. And the beauty of this is in most places, we have the flexibility and freedom to decide year by year what's going to work best for our kids.
I think that is one of the biggest pieces I like to talk about when we're talking about education options,
mm-hmm.
is each kid, each year.
Right.
Almost every one of our kids, I want to say every one of our kids, but I can't think on my feet to make sure that it's every single one of them.
There's a lot of them.
Most of them have had at least 2 different schooling options, if not 3, over the course of their kind of school career thus far.
I think 2 have only been one type.
Yeah. And
anyway.
So most of them have done different things at different times.
Yeah.
Based on who they were at the time.
And what they needed.
Based on who you were at the time.
Yes.
And kind of what our family needed. Right. And so that kind of that intersection of those 2 things, I think, can really inform a lot of things about your school choice.
No. And the other piece with this, who is my child, is we have to look at our relationship.
Oh, that's huge.
What is our relationship right now with our child?
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit in the workshop, but I think it's really important to bring up is that if we're in a place where there's a lot of conflict and there's a lot of adversity between our relationship, the relationship has to come first.
Absolutely.
And so you have to take into consideration that piece of the puzzle. And that may end up being, well, we need to have a little bit of time apart. And that will help grow our relationship because we're going to be conscious of it. We're going to be aware of it. And then when we are spending time together, we're going to be intentional that it's not about school. It's not about other things. It's about the relationship.
That's really good, because when you're homeschooling your child, not only do you have to be on them for math homework, or should I say, not only do you have to be on them for cleaning their room and doing their laundry, you also have to be on them for their math homework and their English assignments.
Exactly. And
which in some situations, in some relationships, might might not be the best thing.
It might be a little too much, and that's okay. But that is the beauty of this. We get to look at it and say, where are all the puzzle pieces? How are they going to fit together? And maybe I need to change something in order to make sure that the relationship, that the character development of my child is going to be paramount over everything else.
Well, and I think you're starting to touch on our third question. So why don't we just jump into that one?
All right. So our last question was, who is my child? And now for the final question is, what is the goal?
What is the goal? All right.
What is the goal? We need to look and see, what are our expectations for our kids? Are we thinking, okay, based on my history, based on what I've experienced, they are 100% going to college. They need to get all A's in high school. They need to be the valedictorian.
Yeah.
They need, when we start looking at the higher level expectations or what we are picturing in our head, we can start going, is the situation right now lining up with what my a lot of times we have expectations we're not even aware of.
Oh, so true.
Right? And so we need to start looking overarching. Maybe you just start asking yourself the question, what am I picturing for my child's future?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I will tell you, a lot of times what we picture for our child's future and what is actually happening and where they're going are not going to line up.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah, that's convicting.
And it's not to say that we want bad things for our kids.
Well, we don't. No.
We don't. We want good things for our kids, but that's not always what our kids want. And we have to be aware of those things, because ultimately our kid is going to make the decisions that they're going to make, whether we're on board or not.
Yeah.
They may just take a few more years to make them and be filled with bitterness and resentment towards us, but they will make the decisions that they make. And we can either be team my child and start letting them make their decisions, or we can be dead set on how we think their life should go and risk losing that relationship.
Yeah, that's really hard because, in fact, I would say it's one of the hardest things about your children growing up and getting older is having to take a few steps back and let go of the reins a little bit and letting them make their own decisions, especially when you're nervous that those decisions might not work out really well.
Right.
Or you feel like you're convinced those decisions might not work out really well.
Or you know with 100% certainty that those are bad decisions. Now that creeps over into whole other things. But
I do want to back up for a second and be fair to our kids. Our kids don't want bad things for themselves. And we obviously don't know for 100% certainty.
I know, I was kind of joking.
No, I get it. But I think what you're trying to say is that in the end, our kiddos have thoughts and hopes and dreams for their life. And at some point, it's their life.
Mm-hmm.
We want to do everything we can to prepare them, to love on them, to teach them, to help them to grow and prepare them for the future. But in the end, they have to make their own decisions, and they're going to.
Yeah.
And we can't control them and just force them to do what we think is best.
Right. And I mean, there's the responsibility that we are the parents. And, if you're listening to this conversation and you have a 5-year-old, I think you and I are kind of in the situation where we've got a lot of teens and we've got a lot of like high schoolers right now that are starting to go, hey, wait a minute. I don't think I want to do the thing that you thought I was going to do.
Right.
And that's okay. And so I don't think what we're saying is that, just throw your hands up and be like, well, whatever you're going to do.
No. Yeah. We're not saying that. For sure.
But what we're saying is that if you start going, even if you got a little bitty kiddo and you go into the mindset that I have to have flexibility when my kids get older and as they're growing, to start listening to the things that they want to do and try and be okay if it doesn't turn out the way that I have it in my head that it's going to turn out.
That's good. I like that. Yeah, because I think that's a really good point, though, to kind of back that up, is that we have a lot of older kiddos. And it's very easy for me to just picture we're talking about high schoolers here, but not everybody listening has high schoolers and they're not necessarily thinking about that. So if we kind of try to back up a little bit and say, what would be, when we say, what is the goal right now? For me, the easy one to answer is, if you've just recently adopted a kid or you're fostering a kid, the goal is connection. The goal is relationship. And so that should be a piece that factors into your schooling decision is, I want to be building a better relationship with this child because I'm just getting to know them. They've just recently become a part of our family, right? And so what would be another goal? Just to give a couple examples back and forth of goals that would apply not only to kiddos that are, adopted or teens growing up. Because I mean, for me, the teenager, the young adult, one of our kiddos, I'm like, he's got the engineering mind and he's probably headed to college. And so for him, the goal right now is how do we make sure he hits all of his science, math, and English credits and all those things, that he has a strong baseline. So when he starts applying to colleges, he can get into anyone that he wants. Right.
And that goal is based off of what he is wanting right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
What he wants and what we see in him.
Right. And I think that's the thing is you look and you say, what do I see in this kid? I mean, I think you hit on one of my really important goals is that we're making sure that our child feels seen and heard.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think another piece of that is making sure that we are looking where our child is at and building on their strengths and working on maybe the things that they are struggling in a little bit more.
Sure. With
compassion and not making them feel less than.
Yeah.
I really think that when our kids are young, I mean, our kids their entire life, but especially when they're young, building that foundation of confidence and knowing who they are, that they are part of a family that loves them deeply for who they are, and that their worth does not come from how they perform.
Oh, yeah.
Is really important.
Absolutely.
So I think there's lots of goals you can have, right? But I think really the point of this question is just to be thinking about what goals, spoken or unspoken, you have about your kids. And are those the goals you want to have?
Right. Absolutely.
Of being intentional, because a lot of times we have goals or expectations for our kids that we're not even verbalizing. So we're not even really thinking about it. And that sets up unrealistic expectations for our kids.
And when you set up unrealistic expectations, you're setting yourself up for disappointment and frustration.
For yourself and your child.
Ooh, so good.
Awesome. Well, okay. So we're going to recap our 3 questions. The first one is, who am I?
Who am I? Who are my capabilities? What am I used to growing up? And what am I capable of doing? And what role am I capable of playing in my child's education at this stage?
Right. Our second question is, who is my child? How are we going to view our child in their strengths, in the places that they might be struggling a little bit, and meet them where they're at with an education that is going to benefit them for the rest of their lives?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And number 3, what is the goal?
What is the goal? Asking yourself, and if you're married, your spouse, what is the goal for our children's education? What are we expecting? Is that realistic? And how are we going to make sure that our goals remain flexible so that our children can become who they are created to be?
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better, baby.
Awesome.
Well, I hope this episode has helped you as you kind of wrestle through schooling decisions for your children. Thank you for each and every one of you that showed up for our workshop at CAFO. And if you want to hear us speak at CAFO next year, you should definitely be there. It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. And please, if you have additional questions or any podcast ideas, we're always open to answering questions.
Absolutely. We would love to answer any specific questions around education or other parenting topics that you might have. Just reach out using info@connectedparentingminute.com or connectedparentingminute@gmail.com. Either of those email addresses will work, and we would be happy to unpack and answer your questions on an upcoming episode. So before we go, we'd like to remind you,
you don't have to be a perfect parent,
but we can all get a little bit better, one Connected Parenting Minute at a time.
Thank you guys for listening to my mom and dad's podcast. Please like, share, follow, and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.
For more parenting tips or to connect with us, check out the Connected Parenting Minute on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Or you can send us an email using connectedparentingminute@gmail.com.